Here we are, I'm in Five Bridges Road, St Cross. I'm just going to cross the River Itchen. So this is the River Itchen. Lovely view down there towards the aqueduct to the right. And there we are. To the left. Very peaceful. And St Catherine's Hill in the background. There we go off the track. I'll take the slightly hilly route. Right by the motorway. It's a bit noisy. Bit uphill as well. Difficult to talk and walk at the same time. So there's St Catherine's Hill in front. I've gained a bit of height, so I don't particularly want to lose too much, because I should be going up the valley in between where I am now and St Catherine's Hill there. I should be going up the valley to the right, so I don't want to lose too much height if I can avoid it. So there's not much I can do about it, I think. Let's go along here. Minding the wild roses, a bit thorny. There's the blackthorn out at the moment. It's just starting to just go over a bit now. It's all fully out. Right, let's see where we are. I don't particularly want to go too much down. Let's carry on this bit. So this is typical. I've come off something that looked a little bit like a path, has now disappeared. So I'm just finding my way along, but I am still maintaining the height I've got. Of course, everything's quite prickly, all the bushes, and of course where it's got into the spring, it's a lovely sunny day, so I'm not wearing thick coats. Thick coats that protect me from the thorns so much. So I've got to be a little bit more careful. Oh, there we are. We're out in a more open space. There you're seeing things you wouldn't normally see on a walk like this, on account of most people sensibly follow the paths. And something just ran out in front of me. So I wonder what that was. Let's go this way. Looks like there might be a badger set here. Actually, this isn't too bad, because the valley, as you walk up it, it gains, this is all right, because the valley, it gains height as you go up it. So, there we go. Open through to the path. Excellent. There we are, St Catherine's Hill. Imagine how difficult it would have been to assault it. Been knackered by the time you got up to the ramparts, with people chucking that stuff at you from above. So I'm on the path. Bit of easier walking. So that was quite good. I didn't have the trek up through the valley. There's all the blackthorn on the left there. Oh, there's a rabbit. Just oh, 2 rabbits. Yeah, I think there's lots of rabbits around here. Yeah, that's all the blackthorn out. Soon be the hawthorn. Most of these other bushes, all the green, that's all hawthorn, but that's another month or so away. Used to be the old saying, my mum used to say, "May cast a clout till May is out." And then we always used to have a debate, was it May the month? Or is it May the flower? Because hawthorn is known as May. It's May blossom. So hawthorn has always been called May. And in the olden days, they used to go out on May Day, the 1st, and gather in sprigs of hawthorn. And that was known as gathering in the May. So it is May. And the clout is your winter woolies. So may cast a clout till May is out. Means don't put away your winter woolies till the hawthorn's out. Yeah. It's really warm today. They say it's going to be the warmest day of the year. I think it will be. We're just approaching the middle of April. Yeah, someone up ahead. He's really entered into the spirit of it. He's just got his shorts on. So we're just approaching now the bridge over the motorway. So the noise will increase dramatically now. So it'll be interesting to see how effective the noise reduction is. So this was what all the controversy was in the 80s and early 90s, when they cut the cutting through Twyford Down, split it into 2. And there was a lot of controversy. Trouble is, they discussed it for 20 years, and it was whether they cut a cutting through or dug a tunnel. And after 20 years talking about it, they just stopped and said, right, we're going to do the cutting, which they did. And apparently it turned out afterwards that the tunnel would have been cheaper. But there you are. So it was a bit of a nightmare. I was working on golf courses in more, well, that way, up more middle and North Hampshire. I was building golf courses. So I used to have to travel each day. And for quite a bit of it, I got a motorbike. And I went by motorbike, which was just so much easier because Hockley, just by here, the Hockley traffic lights, that while they were building the cutting, was a nightmare in the rush hours. So, yeah, so I went on my motorbike and I used to glide past. I'm just going to show you here, because what they did do, when they dug the cutting and all that was done, so of course they reinstated, and on the St Catherine's Hill side, because the old road used to go by St Catherine's Hill, that's all filled in and all returned to nature now. It's just a pathway through there, and so they planted they sowed it with wildflower mix, and as a result of that, you have all sorts of wildflowers. You've got all these cowslips, you see. And of course, there's just masses all around here. There's a bee on that one, if you can see that. He's having a look. So yes, there's loads of cowslips and other things growing. There's another bunch there. And it's funny, because when I was young, I was always interested in botany and nature in general. That's what I did as a living most of the time. So I was always interested in that. But I'm going back to the 60s, when cowslips had become really rare. And I used to make homemade wine when I was sort of 13, 14. I used to make homemade wine. And they used to talk in the old recipe books about cowslip wine. And it was quite funny how did they ever get enough cowslips to make cowslip wine? But of course they did. Cowslips were very common. Before all the agricultural chemicals came in after the Second World War from America, all the weed killers and that. Of course, all of these flowers were common, and then they virtually died out by the 60s. They were just confined to a few old meadows and that. God, it makes you puff going uphill. I can remember I used to do a lot of walking in Scotland in the 1980s and 70s. I was a lot younger then. So when there was all the controversy over the digging of the passage through, splitting the Twyford Down, as I say. So when they were digging the cutting, it was very controversial. So there was a group of environmentalists, young environmentalists. Most of them come, I think, from London and that. But they camped out on the down here, trying to stop the work. And so they camped up here. I think there was only sort of 15 to 25, that sort of number of them. But they were called, it was a newspaper locally, called them the Dongas tribe. And I'm going to show you why they were called that. Because, as you're probably beginning to see now, there's great big cuttings through the down. Now let me just go over to the other side. We'll go down this one. We'll go over to the other side. Now these cuttings, these are called the Dongas. Right, so let's just go down this one and up on the other one. And I'll tell you what I know about it, which isn't all that much actually. But it's always worth, you can of course Google anything nowadays. I just hope I get it correct by the time you're reading this what I've told you is completely out of date. Right, let me just get up this bit so I can breathe again. So, you have great big ditch trench through here, and further ahead you've got others, you see. Now this is the interesting bit, is that Donga is a Metabele word from Africa, and it means a gully. And these gullies got the name, they're called the Dongas. So at some point, of course, Winchester, that's Winchester, just over in the distance there. Of course, a big university town and that. So somehow a Metabele word for gully became attached to these gullies. And that seems to have happened sort of 120, 130 years ago. So, little road just over there. So, the Dongas, where do they come from? Well, behind me, that's going across the South Downs. That's the high ground. And in ancient times, of course, the high ground would have been grazed by animals, and that it would be fairly open, and that naturally it would be fairly open. But down in the valleys, down here, that would have been wooded, and dangerous, because there'd be wolves and goodness knows what roaming about, and they're dangerous. So the ancient people, the Neolithic people, the Mesolithic people before them, all the way going back to the Ice Age, there's a route which comes from Kent, and it runs along the high ground, and it's called the Old Way. And going through Hampshire, it's called the Harrow Way. And this is it. It come at this point. This is the Harrow Way, the Old Way here. So what happened, you've been on the downs and that, you see, people would be moving sheep and doing whatever they used to do. They're still moving about. And they were also, the ancient civilizations of Greece and that, they had, metalworking was starting to be done way earlier than it was here. But they needed, when they discovered bronze, they needed tin. And a really good, of course, a really good place to get tin is Cornwall. So they did sail there. The Greeks sailed, they're Phoenicians, great sailors. They sailed all out of the Mediterranean and that, but quite dangerous. But there was an overland route as well, and that was this. So actually this does, eventually, the Old Way, it comes through here, it carries on, it goes past Stonehenge, and showing how old it is, passes Stonehenge and Blickmead, which goes back to Mesolithic times, just next to Stonehenge. It goes all the way down to Seaton, down in Devon. And it's thought that tin used to be traded along this route as well. But of course, when they got here, this is the river valley in front of us. This is the river valley of the River Itchen. So, of course, has to go through the river valley. So you would have come along here, and then you've got to go downhill, quite steeply downhill here. And then you go on to a ford of the River Itchen, which is at Winchester, just over away a little bit there. But you had to get down this quite steep bank here. So, of course, what happened over the centuries, millennia that this was used, bringing animals and that, it would wear away the hill, because they would get a particular route down it, and they would gradually wear it down, and it would wear down and wear down. And of course, very slippery, because I don't know if you can see how light the soil and that is here. And underneath this is all chalk, because this is all part of the chalk downlands and that. Hampshire consists of the North Hants Downs, all chalk, and it's all chalk around here. Very, very slippery when it's wet in winter. I'll take my word for it. I will vouch for that. Very, very slippery. So you can imagine the people, as I say, Neolithic and that, all the way up to medieval times, coming along here later on with their carts, but with their animals and that. There would be a route down which would gradually get deeper and deeper as they wore it away, because they would use the same bit, and it gradually got deeper and slippery and that, and in the end it just became impassable. So all they do is move a bit to the side and start using that, and the same thing would eventually happen there. So that is where these came from, these gullies. That is what they are. So there we are. You've learnt a bit this morning, haven't you? So that's what they are, and somehow the name Dongas got attached to them, and that is a Matabele word from Southern Africa. So who knows? But there we are. So what happened was they would descend down by St Catherine's Hill there. They would go across the Water Meadows there. As I say, the River Itchen's there. The River Itchen, I think, was in several channels. I think there was something like 5 channels going through the Water Meadows. The Water Meadows all still there. And there was a ford, as I say, it's just round the corner over there. There was a ford, which was the crossing place. And of course, a little community eventually grew up around the crossing place. And the people used to be charged a toll for crossing it and that. And I suppose the people looked after the ford, and eventually a bridge would have been built and that. So a little community grew up around there, bit of money to be made, you see. They weren't daft. And that is the origins of Winchester. So a little community grew up, and actually Winchester High Street now is at the bottom. You can still see the bridge where the original ford was, down, as I say, in the Water Meadows and that. And then you go straight up, and then you carry on the downs, and then you're heading you're heading towards Stonehenge and that, over the downs afterwards. So that is the origin of Winchester. And Winchester, of course, became really important later on in Saxon times. Winchester became really important. It was the capital of England for a while, in, of course, Alfred the Great's day, and that became a great centre of learning. Winchester Cathedral was built, was always very important. And as I say, Alfred the Great, of course, he had his centre there. He beat the Vikings, sorted the Vikings out, and that was the origins of England, till Harold, of course, till William arrived from across the Channel. And so that's it. So that's really my story that I wanted to show you. The Dongas there, through the Water Meadows, over the little ford through. That's where Winchester grew up, and there we are. So that is the Dongas. That's the story of the Dongas, and here they are. I will just say, I had a look the other day on my YouTube channel, Walk Hampshire, and I noticed that I've doubled my followers. I've got 2 now, so I got quite excited. So the tribe, the Dongas tribe, so that's why they were called the Dongas tribe, as I said. It was because of the Dongas here. And they camped up here, trying to disrupt the building of the road. What the road does, it connected up the M3, you see, because the M3 had been built out from Southampton. It had been built down from London, and they, as I say, they argued over it for years. And then there was all this controversies. This group of environmentalists, they camped up here, and they tried. And at the time, they became really well known, and there's one of them called Swampy. I don't know if he's still alive, but he's grown up now. He's got a son of his own. I think he's carried on being an environmentalist, and I think his son is as well. But I think he was only about 15, and he got buried in a tunnel, and that summer they tunnelled and stayed there, and they really believed in what they were doing, and he became really famous, and so there we are, and that's who they were, and that's how they got their name. But I know there was another one. I think he died recently, and he was one of the original of the Dongas and that. But of course, that's 30 years ago. So of course they've all grown up. And, here we are. So I think that's about the end of my little story about the Dongas and the old way. I will show other bits because the old way comes right through Hampshire, and there's another bit of the it's called the Harrow Way, as I say, through Hampshire. And I'll show you another bit of it, and you see how it follows the downland and that. And we'll have another little chat about the old way because I find that quite interesting. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you found that a bit interesting, and I'll catch you again on the next video.